Okay. So this is a subject that we've covered in the past, and this just happens to be a thought that came to mind again. We'll go through it. Perhaps we'll get some more data from this. I see Sister Heidi just joined us. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Heidi. I'll assume that you heard me and then you just can't come off of mute. That's not a problem. Okay, no problem. I see you. All right, so let's get into it. What is this concept called charge? I don't think we're going to take the full 2 hours tonight, but we'll see what happens. The learning objectives tonight will be to look at the concept of charge from the perspective of Dianetics. What effect does charge have on a PC or pre-clear? What is the chemical basis for charge? How does one reduce or remove charge? And what could charge be with respect to the Holy Quran? And then the last part is going to prep us, I think, for a part two, perhaps. And that is, if charge has a chemical basis and this chemistry can affect our diet, can our diet be used to keep us in a chronic state of aberration? Is that, assalamu alaikum, Sister Carol? Okay. So the reference material used tonight, I did use Dianetics Book 1, and the majority of the references come from a book called Molecules of Emotion by Dr. Candace Pert. And I use this book to kind of add some data that would kind of be in harmony with the subject matter. I think there might be a little bit of science or survival, but I'm not quite sure if I put it in or not. So let's begin with this concept. What is charge? Does everyone, or is there anyone in the group that does not know what charge is? Charge is a concept that comes up in Dianetics Book 1. Does everyone understand what charge is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We're going to look at charge from a chemical level. So we first begin by going through the tech, and it says that the Dianetic auditor should determine beforehand, in any case, whether he wishes to attempt a release or a clear. Now, who knows the difference between a release or a clear? Or who doesn't know the difference between a release or a clear? What is the difference? Sister Peggy, you're saying you don't know the difference between release and the clear?
I think I know, but I just want to hear it for sure because
Okay.
I think a release must come before a clear.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. So there's two goals, and the two goals are slightly different. Okay. He says in a release, one does not attempt entrance into phases of the case which will or may bring about a necessity of long work, and gives his attention to the location and release of emotional charge. So when you're dealing with working for release, you're looking for specific areas of charge that you can kind of get off quickly. Does that make sense? Okay, you're looking at, because what you're doing is you're gaining those attention units, and the more attention units you can gain, the more you can bring this individual up the tone scale, correct? Okay. So again, in a release, one does not attempt entrance into phase of the case which will or may bring about necessity of long work, and gives his attention to the location and release of emotional charge. When you're dealing with a clear, the auditor gives his attention to the location of the basic engram. And for some, that's going to take a little bit of work. That takes more time than it would to go after the release. Does that make sense? Okay. So when you're going for a clear, what you're looking for is you're trying to discharge the emotion of the entire engram bank. You're going for a release, you're going for just specifics. So if you go to a specific point on the time track, let's say you have a person go back to a time of a loss, then you're dealing with that specific situation. And by dealing with that specific situation, you're gaining back the attention units. You're able to release some charge with regards to that specific event. And that person will still go up on the tone level. They'll go up on the tone scale. But that is not the same as releasing the charge of the entire engram bank. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. He says on page 216, the engram bank is best attacked primarily by discharging its emotional charge anywhere it can be contacted. So whenever you have someone go back on the time track, go back to a point of, where something happened, and then have you made contact with that point, and then you deal with that point. That's the start of the process. You're gaining those releases. If you have the time, then you can go after the basic in order to wipe away the area in the engram or the reactive mind that contains the most power. Go ahead, Sister Patricia.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
You stated that it would take a long time to do the release than the basic.
No, it would take a longer time if you want to go to clear, if you want to erase the entire bank, that's going to take longer than a release. And okay, a release is when you're like dealing with one specific event. But the engram bank is the totality of everything.
Okay, yeah.
So with a release, you're going after one point, you're getting back some attention units, you're getting rid of some charge, you're getting some movement up the tone scale. And that can be done more quickly than going after the entire engram bank.
Okay.
So the thing that came to mind with regards to that was, you ever notice when you have a cell phone and you're contacting customer service or customer support and there's a problem with your cell phone? One of the things they'll tell you to do is they'll tell you, take the battery out of your phone. And then the next thing you do is they say, you got to wait a minute or two and then put the battery back in. Have you ever experienced that?
That's the most style phones.
Okay. What's happening is, whenever you're dealing with electrical devices, the electrical devices has something called capacitors. And what a capacitor is, a capacitor will store electrical energy in it, that even after you take the battery out, that device will stay electrically charged for a certain amount of time. Like when in the fire department, when we do a car accident and someone's in the front seat, one of the first things that we do is we disconnect the cables to the battery. And the reason why we do that is we don't want what to take place when we're inside the car working with the driver. That airbag can, if it has not already deployed, can possibly deploy while we're sitting there with the person in the front seat. And if that airbag deploys while we're there, guess what happens? Now we just our head is going to be smashed into the head of the driver. Does that make sense?
So that's a that airbag is that powerful where it's gonna
Oh,
snap your neck?
oh, the airbag is powerful enough to do some damage to you. It can do damage to you. And so we disconnect that battery because in that car, that car has it's called capacitance. So that
So
airbag is still charged, even though
save energy. It's like
even
saving the energy.
it stores the energy for a certain amount of time. But
Okay.
but the way the capacitor works, that energy will drain off. The capacitor is like a temporary battery, but it'll only stay charged for a certain amount of time, and then that charge will basically run out.
Oh, okay.
Right? It's the same thing with the cell phone. You take out the battery, but you got to wait a minute or two. What you're doing is you're waiting for that capacitor to run out. And then once the capacitor runs out, they have you put the battery back in, and that's when they can do what they need to do to fix the cell phone. Okay. But the brain operates the same way. Okay.
Mhm.
We can be disconnected from a certain environment, but the effects of that environment can still have an effect on us, even though we're no longer there, correct?
That's right.
Okay. So our reactive mind can still store emotional energy, even though we're no longer connected to that environment. See, if we're connected to that environment is like a battery. So that environment, as a battery produces energy, an environment produces perceptics. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And those perceptics are, I guess you could say that's kind of like the energy that's going to fuel this engram. Even though we're no longer in that environment anymore, our reactive mind is like the capacitor of an electrical device. The data from that harmful environment has still been stored in us. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
I think,
Yes.
did I see Sister Angela come in? Assalamu alaikum, Sister Angela.
Walaikum salam. Merry Christmas.
Speaking of aberrated minds and capacitors,
Yes, sir.
Merry Christmas.
How was your trip, Brother Lufan?
It was interesting. It was a trial. It was a excellent experience, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a trial nonetheless.
Oh,
It was a we had a we had to deal with study guide number 3, overcoming difficulty.
right, right.
We had to overcome some difficulty, and we had to rise above emotion into the mind of thinking of God. I'll just put it that way.
And I bet some of them charges was serious too.
Uh, but what did happen, and I just take a little side note for this.
Mhm.
For the believers that have not seen the video, uh I'll send it out, or if you can remind me, I'll try to post it before we end. The grant unveiling was the 16th. And what they do, what Seed Incorporated does, brother Scott, Sister Erica, they work with families of murder victims, and they produce art. They're in touch with artists from all over the world, and they have these artists produce portraits of the deceased sons and daughters of individuals that have been murdered, through violence, and they give those to the families as a gift, so they have something positive as a memory. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
But now that was Saturday. But now
Mhm.
Sunday, what they did was they wanted as many auditors as they can get to come and then actually audit the family members that were still dealing with the grief of their murdered family member.
Mhm.
So all day Sunday was auditing, and they had some great wins down there.
Praise be to Allah.
There was one sister in particular. I remember seeing her on Saturday, and she looked one way on Saturday. And when she came out of her session on Sunday, there was a sister named Sister Pamela Muhammad, who took this sister through session, and this sister looked like she was about 5 or almost, I'd say about 5 years younger
Praise be to Allah.
after her auditing. So there was that sister that I saw. That was the only sister I saw like a before and after. But
Mm-hmm.
there was some more wins. So the auditing sessions went well on a Sunday.
Praise be to Allah.
I'll try to remember to put the link in, but if you go to Seed Incorporated, they do have the link up from Saturday's grand unveiling, and it was a beautiful event. It was worth the trip. It was worth the trip.
Mhm.
Okay.
Sister Angela,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Sister Patricia.
Praise be to Allah. Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum salam. I just wanted to share a little bit with you.
Oh, wait a minute. Is that as in the words of Brother Scott? Is that Sister Patty Long?
Yes, sir.
Well, Sister Patricia, you have more data on it than I do, so by all means, do share.
Yes, sir. Well, on the auditing portion, I'll speak on
Mhm.
that. So it was very challenging. The first day, I lost like 3 auditors, and we had like 8 people scheduled, but we worked it out because some people didn't show up. So we
Yes,
worked it
ma'am.
out, and then that was the first session, and we had some wins there as well. Brother Scott was actually interviewing the pre-clears after their session, and he was saying how so many of them looked so much younger than they did when they came in.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the second session, we only had 2 auditors, and I think we had 8 people scheduled as well, but the other people didn't show up. So, and we moved to another location, and so we did that, and they both had great wins. One of the sisters that Brother Lukeman was talking about, she was the one in the second session, and she
Mhm.
had a great win. So overall, it worked out well. I was very nervous in the beginning, but it all worked out. So Allah was good.
Praise be to Allah.
Yes, ma'am. But I do want to ask you if you could audit me over Zoom so we can talk about that.
Oh, yes.
But it
You
was a
need to
wonderful weekend. I had-
decompress. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right.
So Brother Lukman,
Yes.
so in a situation that's just been spoken on, is this how people can go into a mental status if they don't get audited? Because all this pain and suffering and upsetness and, so much is upon that person.
Mhm.
And they haven't let it go. So is that how they get into the mental state?
Let's take one of the lessons, because our Supreme Wisdom is a book of formulae. Let's take a lesson and use it to understand what you just said. If we go to Lost Found Muslim lesson number 2, question number 8. Okay, it talks about how things accumulate in a fine mist that the naked eye can hardly detect, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and depending on the current of air, some currents are cold and warm and some are swift or changeable. And then based on that current, as it becomes heavier than gravitation, it will distill back in the form of water or a rain or the form of ice, correct?
Mhm.
That same principle is applicable with regards to the tech and how the mental illness works. So as you understand the Dianetics, it occurs the same way. The negative experiences in life, they accumulate. And they accumulate the same way in a fine mist that the naked eye can hardly detect. So the things that we go through throughout the day, each thing might seem to be insignificant. However, when you take what we go through on a day-to-day basis that seems to be insignificant, and you accumulate the small things over time, which could be days, weeks, months, or even years, eventually, all of those painful situations, whether they're very small and insignificant or large, they will accumulate, and then eventually all of that comes back, and we could call that a break. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. Have you ever been in an experience where you haven't been really in a good mood and then someone says that one thing and then they unleash the fury of hell from you and you wind up, you're not just cussing them out for what they did, but you're cussing them out been going on for the past maybe months and they just happen to be the one that gets the brunt of all of your fury?
Yeah, they like that fire.
Okay. So it's like that's the same way. So if we look at our lessons, there's principles and formulas in our lessons. And once we understand the formulas, I believe it opens the door to understand other things. This madness accumulates over time. I think, this is me personally, I think prayer is one of the ways that we can kind of remove that accumulation. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
If we stay prayerful, if we stay on top of our prayers, if we guard our prayers, then as the negative stuff accumulates, while we're in prayer, we're able to rise above our emotions, right? Into the mind and thinking of God.
Yes,
And that allows it so that the stuff does not accumulate.
okay.
Okay. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, little things accumulate to become big things. The hurricanes that go through and wipe out states started out as water evaporating from the surface is in a fine mist, which is harmless little water evaporating and rising. And then eventually what happened was that water accumulated and came back as a storm. That storm is called overt hostility, covert hostility, antagonism. Okay. Let's see. I think I have to take a quick break real quick. Sister Angela, could you take over for a quick minute?
Yes, sir.
I just have to go to the other room for a split second and
No
find
problem.
one at the door. I'll be back shortly.
Yes, sir. I'm just assuming we was on charge. But Sister Patricia, Muhammad, both of you are Muhammad, but the one that was just talking with Brother Luke Mine.
We both Mohammeds and we both came from the same place.
Okay, so the one that was just speaking. The
Oh, okay.
question that you just posed for him.
About the mental illness.
Yes, ma'am. Can you restate the question again?
Well, I was listening to what this Patricia was talking about and how they had auditing. And Brother Lukman was talking about for the people, the parents, the family members who went through,
Mm-hmm.
someone passing or get killed, and so they were holding on to this pain and this anger,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they hasn't released it. So if you keep
Right.
holding on without any kind of assistance to release it, that goes into mental illness.
I would say for me, absolutely. I have I remember my mother had a mental break and I had one. As a matter of fact, there was a few people in my family, and I can connect this with either being a shared engram or something that is kind of inherent as far as pain. And we don't look at pain like that, but it is absolutely inherited, not just prenatally, but we can, as we pass on superstitions. You ever, sweep a person foot from the south or
Yeah,
break a mirror?
yeah.
And you ever been in the house and had that done and you see a child react and say the same thing that the great grandmother said?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes,
we
ma'am.
pass down these beliefs and we believe it so wholeheartedly. And so pain for me, I saw the pain of my mother. I remember going through the same thing. And of course, back then, I couldn't name it. I couldn't see the connection. That I was in her valence, handling it just like she did,
Mm.
and not releasing. So even though some of us are functionally, some people get high and they function, some people are illiterate and they function, and some people are severely aberrated and highly charged and still function. So it doesn't always have to equal a mental break, but at the same time, we are not operating to the best of our own self because we're carrying these charges and aberrations that some of us think is just our nature.
Mm,
I just got a short fuse,
mhm.
things of that nature. I think that it's Sister Denise. That's you on the phone, Sister Denise? Whoever it is, I think yeah, there you go.
Yes, it's me, sis. It's me.
Yes, ma'am. Assalamu alaikum.
Well, like it's long. I'm sorry, I've been on a journey.
It's
You
fine.
know, with my husband and surgery and all that. It's been getting the best out of me. But I wanted to ask you something. Like sometimes families have this, what do you call it? That how you handle
Mhm,
life is like everybody else's life. And I know it's not. But
mhm,
it's like if you go against it, of the tradition, I think that's the word,
right.
of how your family has been doing it, so you go against the tradition,
Mhm,
and it's like you're not part of the family anymore because
mhm,
you don't think like them anymore. You don't want to be the victim anymore.
right.
You don't want folks to have sympathy on you anymore. So you come up with another solution to that, whatever that problem is, and it's like, no, you're supposed to feel sad,
Mhm,
every year.
mm,
But so I'm saying how people hold things for 50 years.
right.
Okay. And even though a charge was taken off of that, why do they still hold it? I mean, I know it's not a clear, but they hold the charge was taken off. But why do they 50 years, Sister Andy?
You know what was key is the question: was the charge really taken off?
I'm
You know
on
yeah, because they may be able to speak about it. Like some people can actually, have a recall and go word for word, and not a tears drop. But the charge is still there because it's still something that they don't have peace with. The
no, the
charge is
tears
take
the
right,
tears
right.
drop. The tears drop.
The tears still drop.
The tears dropped. It was a charge, and it
Mm.
was off. But they still holding it 50 years later.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be a charge just for that time, and
Mm.
then they want to go back and grab that warm blanket or whatever, because of whatever. Because
Mm.
I'm asking because 60 years. What did I say? 50? I meant 60 years.
60 years. So you thinking with your rational mind and not
Oh,
your yeah. You thinking with your analytical mind and not your see that reactive mind makes a person think this is how I remember them. This is my
okay.
affinity. This is how I
Okay.
hold on to a piece. So that charge, they're representing it for a possible affinity, or this is how I love them. I memorialize them. This is how I, keep them alive in a state of when they were suffering. Our mind is very powerful. And I'm going to turn it over to Brother Luke Mine after he came back so he could expound on that.
Oh, you were talking about the life continuum.
Uh-huh.
Mhm. The life
Even though
continuum.
you received the charge
Oh, go ahead,
off
Mr.
of it, yeah, you received the charge off of it, but you still hold it. I don't know.
Then all the charge isn't gone.
Mm-mm.
Because
All the
when the charge is gone, when you go back up that tone scale, you go back up through grief, apathy, and you get up through the antagonisms, then you're gonna get to a part where you hit that boredom, and they're gonna be recounting it, and they're gonna seem like they're bored and doing it, but then you keep doing it, and then they'll get to a point where they'll smile, they might laugh a little bit, and when they get to that point where they're laughing about it, then that's probably that would be the area where that charge is no longer there, because now they're recounting it and laughter is being produced.
okay.
So I would think, just me personally, if someone is still shedding tears, which we're going to go through the dynamics of that, then they were never audited to the point of release.
Okay.
Something happened, and I would almost want to guess, and Sis Angela, correct me if I'm wrong, it could have appeared that they were not letting any more emotion go. And so it's possible, I'm just saying, it's possible that the auditor might have thought the case was ended, but if that person was staying at that boredom area, then I would say there was another case similar to that further back in the time track.
Early in it.
Okay.
And that's where they should have gone. Because when they hit this would have released. This back here was the glue that was holding this in place. And I say that because I had an experience like that auditing. I was going through with this brother, and I could see that he was so close, but I couldn't get him to break. He was right there. And I said to him, is there another situation or event similar to this that happened before? And at the time, let's see, this was 2000 and this was 2012. I think it was January 2012. This brother was in his 50s. And right when I said that, he immediately went back to the age of 6 or 7. And when he recounted that event, everything broke loose. Everything broke loose. And that event was so similar to the one that I was auditing on. A lot of the perceptics were similar. So does that kind of hit the?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you got to go back
You hit
further.
something else too.
Got to go back further.
Yeah, an earlier incident. Also, we have to be on the lookout for a person that is basically, especially if any of us ever ordered an auditor, we have to be very careful that they're not telling us what they think we want to hear to leave things the way they are. I used to call it autopilot, where it looks like they're going through all of the drills, fine, and you're supposed to get this release, and you see that you don't get it because they're just saying what you want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
They're appearing to be working the case, and they're not.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. Drop this down. Go back here. Sister Heidi, I like your screensaver. That's actually a pretty good series. Okay, let's keep it moving. Okay, he says, the energy being held in present time in relation to an incident or chain of incidents, the anger, fear, grief, or apathy contained as a misemotion in the case. So that's what charge is. It's stored up energy, basically. Okay. So then let's look at this. If we look at the fact that, first of all, do we understand the concept that when you look at the Thetan and the meshed body, that is the same as saying the spirit that dwells in the flesh? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The spirit and the flesh are not the same thing, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The flesh, in the words of Mother Tanetta Muhammad, and I'm gonna paraphrase, the flesh is just a tool that we use in three-dimensional time.
Mm-hmm.
But we represent that eternal energy or spirit. Because if we are direct descendants of the first God, right? Minister Farrakhan, he teaches us that, correct?
Yes, sir.
If we are the direct descendants, then wouldn't that mean that we are energy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are energy that exists in a physical body. So now, if we are the energy that exists in that physical body, if we have different parts of our energy is stuck at different parts of the past events, okay, that means we are divided as an individual. Part of us is in present time. There's another part of us that's divided in different parts of the past. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So if all these different parts of us are sending information, then the aberrated person is a person who is stuck at different parts in the past, not realizing that they're in the present, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're pretty much all over the place. So the auditor's job is to locate those parts of us in the past and bring all those parts into present time. And then once we're in present time and we are completely in present time, then in the tech, that is called a state of clear. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you look at the concept of a double-minded man being unstable in all their ways, and if you look at the book of Romans, chapter 7, where it's talking about the law of my members is at war with the law of my mind, the whole, one of the main purposes of life is for us to find out who we are as an individual and basically come back to present time. And when we come to present time, then to me, that's like being in harmony with where we're told in the self-improvement guys, this is our goal. Our goal is to meet our essence with the essence of the creator, correct? Y'all with me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So charge is harmful energy or force accumulated and stored in the reactive mind as a result of conflicts and unpleasant experiences the person has had. And he says that the word charge comes from the terminology of batteries. So batteries hold charge, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then you
Yes,
take
sir.
the batteries and you put the batteries in the device, and the batteries give that device movement and action and activity, correct?
Yes,
Well,
sir.
that's what the reactive mind is doing. The reactive mind is like batteries, but these batteries give energy to the negative side of self. So auditing is like finding the batteries and taking the batteries out. He says it is stored energy on the time track and is the electrical impulse on the case that activates the meter. So when they're doing when you have the cans, we're all familiar with the cans, correct? When they pose certain questions and they see those needles jump, what they're finding those areas where that energy is still stored. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now let's get into the chemistry of charge, because I was actually on a Zoom meeting earlier, and we got into the conversation about charge, and we spoke about it. But then I said, okay, but what's the actual fact? What is the science of the charge? What is charge exactly? So then I'm gonna pose this question to the group tonight. What exactly is charge? We know in auditing we want to remove the charge, and we know that's one of the foundational goals is to make contact with that painful event and release charge. But the question I want to pose to the believers is, what exactly is charge? And why is the removal of charge? Why is it so beneficial? in auditing a case? Does anyone have anything they would like to attempt on that one? What exactly is charge?
I,
Because he mentions charge in Dianetics in book one. He mentions charge, but he doesn't really get into the science of what is charge really. Go ahead, Sister Angela.
well, coming from book one and seeing it, as they put it in the little mini movies that they had, it was represented by a little lightning bolt,
Mm-hmm.
meaning as some form of electricity, which we know we have in our body.
Okay.
What that did, how I understood it, it almost kept this, it's like keeping something plugged in.
Mm-hmm.
The longer we put it in plug it in an outlet, the more it runs. It
Mm-hmm.
runs nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
So taking the charge off for me was unplugging it,
Mm-hmm.
denying it electricity to keep it running. So now it's an event that's not playing. It's just filed. That's how I understood it.
Okay. That's fine. That's good. That's good. Anyone else? Sister Denise, go ahead. You're on mute, Sister Denise. There you go.
Yes, sir. I was thinking charges is in charge, of where you can't move beyond the point. I was thinking about a woman that's pregnant. Now I remember the 12 hours of pain, but I don't remember it like I did when I first had my son.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? Because that pain, that the charge on that pain had been taken off. And so I can remember, but I don't remember with the same pain. I don't have that same emotion attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be charge? That's what I thought.
The fact that you remember it, but you don't have the same pain connected to it, I would
Right.
say that part of that has been refiled in your standard memory.
Okay.
So that charge is kind of different.
Oh, that's different from the charge you're talking about.
Right.
Okay.
Because in auditing, the goal is to remove the charge from the case, because it's the accumulation of charge that keeps a person aberrated. That makes sense?
Okay. Yes, so it could be more than one.
What do you mean more than one?
One. Okay, because you're saying to move it off the case.
Yes.
So it might be more than one if you go back to an earlier time or something like that.
If let's put it this way, if you were to go back to that time period and it still caused an emotional response, then there's still some charge on the case.
Okay.
Okay. But I think with the way we're going to explain it, it's going to make more sense.
All right.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
And for any of those auditors that actually do this on a regular basis, by all means, jump in where you feel you can add something to the message, because that is fine as well. Okay, the chemical basis of charge. Okay, come on. Okay. Okay. So in Dianetics, on page 118 and page 119, this is what L. Ron Hubbard says. He says, a concoction like ACTH has a slightly different, I wrote that in doubly, but it is too exclusive to have any research done with it. But on reports about it, it seems to affect engrams in this time sense. That is to say, as will be covered under therapy, individual's reactive location in time is shifted by it. ACTH and perhaps many others in its category move the individual from one chronic engram into another. Okay, so the one thing he mentions in book one, he mentions ACTH and how it affects the person and the engrams. Okay, so ACTH is a chemical that is responsible, one of the chemicals responsible for keeping the person in a state of restimulation. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Come on, computer. Okay. He says, my computer starting that funny again. Okay. Electric shock treatment, the beatings of Bedlam, and other things of their ilk, including surgical treatment of things psychosomatic in origin, have another effect, but one not dissimilar to drugs like ACTH, in that they give another shock which transfers the engram pattern to another part of the body and switches around the aberrations. So when these things work, it's because the new aberration is less violent than the old one. So there's something about this ACTH and its effect on the engrams that causes the problems with regards to the person. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there's something about the ACTH. So now, what is ACTH? The full name is adrenocorticotropic hormone. Okay, it's a chemical that's produced in the endocrine system. And very simply, the hypothalamus is part of the emotional brain. The limbic system and its neurons have axons that extend into the pituitary gland, which sits below it. So if you look at that diagram of the brain, that's what's called a sagittal view. It's a side view of the brain. That green area is the thalamus. That orange area beneath it is called the hypothalamus, and then you have what's called the pituitary gland, which is also called the master gland. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's right.
So these axons secrete a neuropeptide called CRF. Okay, and CRF stands for cortical releasing factor, which controls the release of another informational substance. So what happens is in a stressful environment, the body will produce a chemical that produces another chemical so there's a chain reaction. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there's a chain reaction going on. So thus, when CRF hits the pituitary gland, it stimulates the secretion of ACTH, an informational substance that then travels through the bloodstream to the adrenal glands, where it binds to the specific receptors on adrenal cells. So now what does that actually mean? So when we perceive something as a threat, when we either want to fight or flight, which is any emotional thing that took place in our life, it produces a flight or fight reaction, correct?
Yes, sir.
Once we view things as a threat, our body translates the threat into a chemical called CRF. And this chemical travels to the pituitary gland and produces what's called ACTH. Okay, so our body translates our thoughts into chemistry. Okay, and then when that chemistry hits the adrenals, which is right above the kidneys, this is the area that controls blood pressure. So individuals that have high blood pressure, one of the reasons why individual has high blood pressure is because their body's under a constant state of fight or flight. They're in a constant stressed state.
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is one of the reasons why she weighs other than her own self and why the blood pressure registers more than 32 and they suffer from high blood pressure and all these illnesses. Part of it is the presence of these chemicals in the body that's produced by our thinking. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, our thoughts produce chemistry. So now there's an article, and I want to share this article real quick. Let's see, here it is right here. Okay, can you see this article on my screen?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Okay, I'm gonna read this, but then I'm gonna kind of I don't want to say translate it, but I'm gonna take this and put it into what's called a cycle of action that will kind of make sense of it. So what a neuropeptide is like just a chemical, it's like a chemical mailing system. It's how different parts of the brain communicate. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So basically what this is saying is that these peptides affect the behavior of by a temporary selective increase in the state of arousal, talking about in the emotional system of the brain, thereby increasing the motivational influence of environmental stimuli. So what's taking place is with these chemicals in the brain, what they're doing, they're affecting the brain in such a way that the environment begins to have more control over the individual. Okay? The presence of these chemicals in the brain allow us to be more susceptible to the influences of the environment. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when we're under stress, isn't that when we fall victim to the Mickey D's and the Wendy's and the Dunkin' Donuts and all those things that we kind of feed into when we're stressed? Because when we're stressed, don't we begin to fall into things that, kind of soothe the soul? We begin to eat and all this other crazy stuff when we're under stress, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So stress allows us to be more susceptible to environmental stimuli. So the way the enemy works is if you keep the people in a stressful state of mind and then you put around them many environmental stimuli, then you keep them going to the bodegas to get the sweets, to get the fast food, to get the Chinese food, to get the alcohol, to get the this, to get the cigarettes, to get the that, correct?
Yes, sir.
So they already know this science. Keep them stressed and put stuff around them that's designed to satisfy the flesh. And that's how you can keep them trapped in the flesh. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this messed body becomes a prison. Okay, but when you read all of this, which I'm not going to do, I just want to put it into what's called a cycle of action, which will help us to understand where I'm going with this. So if we were to read all that, basically what it's saying is this. Contained in that document is a cycle of action, which says, we know cycle of action is start, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, Sister Peggy. Assalamu alaikum. So we start with the acquisition of a conditioned behavior. Okay, that's the start. So the conditioned behavior is a compulsion, an obsession, an insanity, a neuroses, or a psychosis, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then the growth represents an increase in the state of arousal in the brain. So there are certain things that take place that causes an increased state of arousal in the brain. And then what happens is there's things in our environment that are used to maintain us in that conditioned behavior. That's how the environment is set up. And it's funny, but every time we travel, what are three things to look for that will show you that you're in the Black community? You'll find a storefront church, you'll find a liquor store, and you'll find a Chinese food restaurant. And that's like the three elements you'll find in almost every Black community, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, there's some other elements you'll find, but you'll find the church, liquor store, Chinese food. And I don't know why it's those three. But even when we went to Tuskegee, I'm like, there was a Chinese restaurant in Tuskegee. I'm like, how in the world is as small and quiet as Tuskegee looked? There was a Chinese restaurant in Tuskegee, and down there, it wasn't a liquor store, it was called a package store.
Yes, that's what they call them.
They come down south, package store.
Yes. In
Okay.
Ohio, they call them like that too.
Mhm. So then what happens is when you can maintain the conditioned behavior, that's how you can maintain people in an aberrated state. What you do is you can increase the influence of environmental stimuli. So you put more things in the environment that will
Yes.
keep them in that state. And what does that do? That decreases our ability to overcome the suppressors.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look in the Black community, when you look in our community, it is designed to keep us in a state of suppressed behavior. So
Yes, sir.
our environment is a environment of chronic restimulation. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So then what happens? The individual is controlled by the environment. And if you notice the way the inner city is set up versus the way the suburbs are set up, the suburbs are set up in such a way that the houses are spaced apart. You have an increase in space, correct?
Yep.
When you come to inner cities, we're stacked on top of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you take away space from an individual, the more you increase the aberrated mind. It's called the theory of condensation. It was something that he spoke about in the Philadelphia Doctor course, the theory of condensation. As you decrease the space an individual has control over, you increase the aberration.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You know, when you say that, Brother Lukman, I was thinking about what Dr. Minister Ava was saying about, she was talking a lecture about apartments and projects and how they were designed to stack person underneath each one because somebody doing something above you, stomping and dropping stuff, that's irritation.
Yep.
And then you're getting angry. And then every time you see that person above you, you're looking at them with anger and upsetness because they've been disturbing your peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't go to the office and sometimes the office don't do anything, then there's that rival going on.
Uh-huh.
And she talked about how even putting the Mexicans in the neighborhood of the Blacks, that's a trial because they want us to feud with each other. They want us to fight with each other. And when I heard that, I was like, huh? You would think not, but recent situations happening where I'm staying at, this one neighbor across the street, he from Guatemala. And where I stay, he right across the street. Our houses is right straight in front of each other. Well, I noticed that the lady on the white, which is a white female, she been feeding his dog. I seen it. And then I spoke to him about it, and he made it sound like I'm the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I seen the other white male on the other side of him feeding his dog. So I said, I got even pictures of it. I'm gonna show you what's going on. So he said to me, so you're watching my house? I said, no, I'm not watching your house. I'm watching the street, the neighborhood. I just happened to notice what's going on in your house. So me and him is going and debating. I'm trying to help him be protective, and he's getting angry with me.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh, this is it. Because their mindset is already set on a different race, how we supposed to be and act.
Mm-hmm.
So you put a defense cycle against me, and I'm trying to be your savior. And I said, oh, this is so real. It's sad, but it's real.
So now the question is, and this is just because there's a lesson that comes to my mind as you're speaking. You don't know what those individuals could be saying to him about you, because I
Correct.
can say they accuse the righteous people causing lies. They accuse the righteous people. They accuse them of causing them to fight and kill one another. Right?
Mhm.
They accuse the righteous people telling lies.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at it from the standpoint of what they're doing, not knowing that they could be fueling him and his perception towards you. So there's a whole nother dynamic. In the tech, they call it Sister Andrew, what's it called? The rule of the third person.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whenever there's a dispute,
Third party.
the third
Mm-hmm.
party, there's always a third party that's present. See,
Yeah.
that third party that's
The
present,
hidden third party.
the
That's what
hidden
they
third
call it.
party. See, that hidden third party is found in our teachings in Lost Found Muslim lesson number 1, question number 4. Why do we run Yaqub and his made devil from the root of civilization? See, that's the hidden third party. They accuse the righteous people telling lies. They accuse them, causing them to fight and kill one another. That's the hidden
Mhm.
third party rule. That's already in our text. Well, that is our text, but it's in our lessons.
Right.
Okay. Sister Angela, go ahead.
You know, as you both were talking, I thought about being stacked on. I was just having a conversation with someone about projects, and we talked earlier about shared engrams, engrams that are passed down, and never considered that that middle passage, the engrams from the middle passage being stacked on top of each other, is
Mhm.
something that was given right back to us, but we were stacked on top of each other in the project. So always feeling like, because everybody that I know lived in the projects always felt like they didn't have their own room,
Mhm.
enough space, their own area. And, you know, if anybody, I lived in a city with one of the most notorious projects. Like, they were so savage, they would throw TVs out of a 16th floor to make sure it kills somebody.
Mm.
16 stories, yeah. So this is all, to me, a result because it was for no reason. It could be unprovoked, but there was a constant aberration. Constant. I don't care what time of day you went there, it was constant 24/7.
Wow. You still there, Sister Angela?
Oh yeah, I was done. I'm just chewing on that.
Oh,
That I
okay.
see it from what you shared. I never would put the middle passage in there in this, because
Mhm.
you can imagine, throwing up and
Mhm.
moving your bowels and just everything, and even being dead bodies above and below you,
Mhm.
and being like that for months at a time. And now we in a projects that's giving us a similar type of experience and wondering why we're fighting to the death.
Mhm. And all that's passed down genetically.
Mm-hmm.
So, we still have that now, not understanding fully why we feel the way we feel, but this is some of the stuff that's been passed down. It's called transgenerational trauma.
Absolutely.
It's passed down through the DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now this information is coming from a book called Molecules of Emotion by Dr. Candace Pert. This was an excellent book, but this is just a small portion. So it starts out, says, now here comes the connection to clinical depression. Because we started out with the word charge as given to us through the Dianetics, but then we wanted to find out, okay, let's get more specific. What exactly is this charge that we're talking about that needs to be released from the body? So now the charge we look at, let's investigate ACTH. So now here's a book that was written that gives more weight to what L. Ron Hubbard was talking about back in the 50s. Now here comes the connection to clinical depression. Ever since studies done 30 years ago, we've known that stress increases with increased steroid production.
Mm-hmm.
Depressed people typically have high levels of these stress steroids. In fact, depressed people are in a chronic state of ACTH activation because of a disrupted feedback loop that fails to signal when there are sufficient levels of steroid in the blood. So when a person's in a constant state of restimulation, chronic restimulation, their body is constantly producing ACTH. And when the body is constantly producing ACTH, guess what some of the side effects are? All you got to do is look at problem number 1, 2, 5, and 6 of our problem book. Chronic re-stimulation of ACTH is connected to high blood pressure. It's connected to rheumatism and arthritis and those diseases that are mentioned in our problem book. And it just so happens that all of those diseases that are mentioned in the problem book, question number 1, 2, 5, and 6, You will also find those same exact illnesses on page 65 of Dianetics Book 1. What a coincidence. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So if we're constantly stressed, then our body, then our viewpoint on life is constantly looking at everything from an antagonistic viewpoint, and our body is constantly producing these chemicals. And when our body is constantly producing these chemicals, there's a sickness called, have you ever heard of adrenal fatigue?
Oh, absolutely. I've had it.
Okay, so
Okay.
adrenal fatigue is when the adrenals are so overstimulated and they're constantly work, that the person suffers from chronic fatigue syndrome.
Mhm.
You're just tired. Body is just burnt the hell out.
And the new ailment in the hood is kidney failure. Everybody's on dialysis.
Everyone's on dialysis because the stressful environment is causing an overproduction of epinephrine.
Mhm.
Epi means above and nephro means kidney. So epinephrine is produced above the kidneys, and those above the kidneys, you find what's called the adrenal glands, and that's what produces adrenaline. Okay, we're constantly stressed out. Our body's always producing adrenaline. If you're trying to survive in the hood, then you're always on the lookout. You're always looking over your shoulder. So your body is you're stressed out, and then by the time you get home, you're totally exhausted. Okay.
Mhm.
So the CRF was the cortisol releasing factor. And again, cortisol, another problem. Because the more cortisol you have in the body, the harder it is to lose weight. So for men, the weight problem is the weight that's around the gut. Same problem for the women. You have the gut, you have the thighs, and you have other locations. But
Mhm.
it's you have you have that weight, and no matter how you change your diet, eat one meal a day, you go walk and whatnot, it's hard to release the weight because the weight is not the problem. The weight on the body is indicative of the weight that's on the mind, correct?
Mhm.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So the CRF ACTH axis, because one produces the other, just keeps pumping out more and more steroids.
Mhm.
Autopsies almost always show a 10-fold higher level of CRF in the cerebral spinal fluid of those who killed themselves compared to those who died from other causes. So when a person decides to just end it, if you're able to do a blood test right before they passed away, you'll find high levels of CRF or ACTH.
Oh.
Okay. So I would almost want to guess. And I'm gonna try to find some studies that might support this. I don't know how we could find some studies to support it, but individuals that go off in these malls and at these gas stations and start just firing off shots and whatnot, I
Mhm.
wonder what the level of CRF and ACTH is in their
Mhm.
system right before they snap.
Yes, sir.
Okay, it would be an interesting study.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
I think I asked this question before about medication,
Mhm.
but if a person has been taking these steroid shots for pain, um, is that put a blockage in you to receive any kind of auditing far as the because even though you're getting injections in your feet, in your hip, but it's in the bloodstream.
I don't think the steroids are the problem. I think when you take any type of psychotropic medication, I think that's when you can't receive auditing until you get that out of your system. I don't think steroid is one of those, but I do know that steroids are bad for the body. I know one in particular was one we learned about when I was in paramedic school was prednisone.
Uh-huh.
And prednisone, when you have to take that at low doses over a short period of time because it has negative effects on the body.
Mhm.
The prednisone has some real bad side effects. Oh, let me go back. Okay, so yes.
I just wanted to bear witness to everything we've been saying.
Mhm.
When I was a teenager, I would get really stressed out so bad I would get eczema and I would be itching and so many things. And I had found myself, my mother had had several nervous breakdowns and her sister had as well. And so I had to get to the point where, well, that's kind of when I joined the nation. I was under so much stress in a marriage. And when I went and talked to the brother minister, I was at peace. I still had all the same problems, but I was at peace. And so I found I have 2 adult children now. And I remember telling them when they would get stressed out, because I was, coming out of high school, I was working at National City Bank before I left high school. And just becoming an adult in this crazy world was very stressful for me. And so I saw my children getting stressed as they were coming out of their teenage years. And I would tell them, be very careful when you get stressed out because the nervous breakdowns run in our family.
Mhm.
And so I told both of them that, and I could see this was before I had Dianetics or anything, but I'm just bearing witness to everything that you all have been saying. It's so very important to be able to release any
Mhm.
kind of stress because it gives you high blood pressure. I have high blood pressure, and it's designed that way to kill us. Really, I believe that.
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
That's it.
Does
That's right.
Is there anyone here that has not been on the Zoom meeting where we spoke about the problem book where it talks about her pulse registers more than 32 and what that could possibly mean? Is there anyone that does not know what that possibly could mean? So everyone's heard that before? That way I won't
Yeah.
go back into again.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I won't explain it then. I won't waste the time. Then says we could say that CRF is the peptide of negative expectations, since it may have been stimulated by negative experiences in childhood. Ooh, here we go. Do we all carry around negative expectations?
Yes, sir.
We have negative expectations about ourselves.
Absolutely.
We have negative expectations about other people.
Mhm.
And something's telling me to go ahead and talk about this anyway. So I'm gonna drop.
Oh, I was gonna ask you because I'm not really clear on what a negative expectation is.
Well, not that, but I'm gonna go into this pulse pressure thing, this pulse register
Okay.
22. Because I just have a feeling that there's someone that doesn't know it, but they don't want to say anything. So I'm gonna say it anyway. So when you look at in our problem book, it says her pulse registers more than 32. Okay. In holistic medicine, and this is something I learned years ago studying under, has everyone heard of Dr. Lila Africa?
Mm-hmm.
He produced a book called African Holistic Health. Okay. I was blessed to study under him in, I think it was 07 and 08. I received a certification through him in regard to the holistic medicine through his school. And the one thing he taught us about pulse pressure is it's not really used in medicine, but if you take your blood pressure and your systolic is the upper number and your diastolic is the lower number. And if you subtract those two numbers, you'll get what's called the pulse pressure. So your typical textbook pulse, let's say like 120 over 90, right? That's like textbook 120 over 90.
Yes,
If
sir.
if you subtract the 90 from 120, you get what? You get 30. That's the pulse
Mhm.
pressure. The pulse pressure is the difference between the diastolic and the systolic. Well, your diastolic is your resting pressure, and your systolic is your active pressure. So you're going from 90 to 120, that's when your heart is actually beating. That's the pulse. That's your pulse pressure. When a person suffers from high blood pressure, let's say someone's blood pressure is, let's say 190 over 90. Okay. What would that pulse pressure be?
90?
100.
100. 100. Because 190 minus 90 is 100. That means your heart is going from 90 to 100, and if your heart rate is 60, typically your heart rate is going to be about 70 beats per minute. Look at how far your heart is going from 90 to 100, 70 times per minute, correct?
Hmm.
Okay. Now we know the uncle of W.D. Farad, his pulse was 78 beats per minute, right?
Yes, sir.
And this killed him at 45 years of age.
Mhm.
So when you look at how hard your heart has to beat over the course of 45 years, it has something to do with this pulse pressure. When you study a vehicle, highway miles are easier on the engine than city miles, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because you're city driving, you're start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, right?
Mhm.
The same principles apply to the heart. So when a person's under a lot of stress, that high blood pressure they're going from rest to active, rest to active, rest to active. And there's such a diverse distance between those two. In holistic medicine, when your pulse pressure is more than 32, that's an indication that there's something going on with the body. So in our problem book, it says the pulse register is more than 32, but in holistic medicine, that's an indicator that there are stressors in the body that you have to find now. So I just share that because I felt like, I don't know. I know I'm borderline with the high blood pressure thing. Some days I'm good, some days my stuff goes out of whack. And what I try to do is I try to find some quiet time. I try to meditate. I'm trying to change my diet to get my blood pressure back to where it needs to be. Because I'm trying to avoid taking medication for my blood pressure.
Sure.
So I got to change my diet. I got to get more on top of my prayer. Uh, I have this one article, and I said I was going to get it to the believers, and haven't done it yet, where Mother Tanetta Muhammad talks about the 7 prayers during the day. The 7 prayers. The 5 are obligatory, and there's 2 other prayers that we should do. And I say that because prayer has been connected to, and God willing, we'll add this at another time with the Dianetics. They have done a study with prayer to show that prayer actually has an effect on the body that reduces
Mhm.
anxiety and reduces blood pressure. But it's something you have to do on a regular basis so that it's like any medication, it has to accumulate. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Sister Angela.
I'm bearing witness to what you're saying. When I was at the point of a nervous breakdown, to the point that I'm shivering in the summertime, I had put the TV on the Snow Channel, the Fuzz.
Mm-hmm.
So to drown out the noise in my head, which was me, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know it at the time, but the voice in my head and just all of the symptoms of meltdown, and I turned to prayer. That's me coming into the nation,
Yeah.
and I'm a teenager, and I turned to prayer. I prayed at one point 30 times a day.
Mm.
And it brought me clear through it. Even when we were introduced to Dianetics, some residual things came up when we were with Brother Nori. And again, until I can understand, because what is between spirituality and knowledge, it seems to be a very delicate balance of both that is the key to overcoming it. So I bear witness to the prayer, definitely.
Prayer, we could say prayer is a type of processing.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually getting some auditing, some straight wire, some pleasure moments from the God. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, where this says on page 270, it says that we could say that CRF is the peptide of negative expectation. Since it may have been stimulated by negative experiences in childhood, my mind went straight to English lesson number C1. And English lesson number C1 says, Why does he like the devil? Because the devil put fear in him when he was a little boy. Why does he fear now since he's a big man? Well, because the devil told him to eat the wrong food. And I was looking at this, and if you look at this like an equation, now the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us in the Self-Improvement Study Guide that there's 7 impediments, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you got pride, envy, greed, lust, fear, anger, and vanity. So then the thought process is, if it says because the devil put fear in him when he was a little boy, the thought was, what if we use the word fear and input any one of the other impediments? Why does he put anger in him when he was a little boy? Or because the devil put anger in him when he was a little boy? Because the devil put lust in him when he was a little boy. So what this is telling us is that there's something in our behavior right now. It's something that's not good for us, but it's something that we like. And the reason why we like it is because something happened in our childhood that put it in that place. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there was something that took place in our childhood. And the way there's a doctor named Dr. Gabor Mate. If you find him on YouTube, he has excellent videos. And the way he explains to me, it was just excellent explanation. When you look at a child in their childhood, when something negative happens to a child does not have the resources to leave the home, nor does the child have the strength to fight against whoever it is that's doing whatever they're doing. So the child is forced to suffer through and endure whatever negative things that are taking place, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the child has to rationalize in their mind a certain way to get through this because they can't get away from it. So because a child, and the way I saw this one woman explain it like this, because the child is already programmed to love their mother and father, if the mother and father's in the picture, then whatever is happening to the child believes that it's something that the child deserves. Thus, that is called the negative expectation. Does that answer that, Sister Angela?
Oh, yes, sir.
So what happens to the child believes that that's what the child deserves.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the child doing? The child is eating the wrong food. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have to read between the lines. There's more to our lessons than just reciting what you see. The minister said that Allah is a scientist who speaks in the language of formulae. So we can't just take our lessons on face value. We got to dig a little deeper and find out how are these are formula in the form of pictures.
Right.
Okay. So there's things we like now that we know that are not good for us. But the reason why we like them now is because they were forced on us when we were children. And the things that were forced on us as children, and when we were children, that's what we feel we expected or desired. And then some people will say, when you look back at past relationships, why is it I keep choosing the same type of person? Because the way they treated me was what I expected because I believed I deserved that. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay. Sister Denise.
Yes, sir. The name of was he a psychologist? What would you say? Can you spell his name?
Yes, his first name is Gabor, Gabor, and his last name is Mate, Mate. Yeah, Gabor Mate. Every one of his videos I have watched, every one has been awesome. And I actually have a couple of his books as well. His books are great reads as well.
M-A-H-I-T?
M-A-T-E, Mate, M-A-T-E.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Dr. Gabor Mate.
All right.
So, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just thinking about psychic trauma. How how the children are traumatized,
Mm-hmm.
and they they try to justify. I did this, so I deserve. You
Mm-hmm.
deserved.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm looking at why does he fear now since he's a big man? But this is where we at now.
Yeah.
Or fear, because she's a grown woman. Why is she
Mhm.
still fearing? Why is she she went through all that as a child? But you can make your own decision now. You can. Oh,
Not really, because remember, if this was a program that was placed in the child's mind when they were a child,
yeah.
the only right now, and I'm gonna say it like this: everyone in the room, we're at a certain age, but there's a part of our mind, there's a part of our psyche that's stuck at the age of 6, age of 7. Wherever something happened to us, there's a part of us that's stuck at that age.
Yeah. That's true.
So why does Brother Lukman fear now since he's a big man? There was something that happened to Brother Lukman when he was a child, and he's still dealing with that.
Okay.
Because there was an event that took place I had no control over, so it's still present. Brother Lukman got to deal with it now as a grown man, because why? Because he was taught to eat the wrong food as a child. What is meant by eat the wrong food as a child? We could say to eat the wrong food means this happened to me because I deserved it.
Mm.
And that's how we justify allowing certain people to do certain things to us in the present time. We have in our mind, I deserve it because I don't deserve anything better.
Oh,
We
wow.
don't look at ourselves the way that Allah looks at us.
Yeah.
And some of us tolerate BS because we feel like we deserve that.
Mm.
And for some of us, it's better if we just were by ourselves than to deal with the BS.
Oh yeah.
That's true.
I've heard the minister say once before, and I'm gonna paraphrase it. He was talking to the sisters about, the fact that some sisters are suffering because they're alone. And he said it, and I'm gonna paraphrase it. I can't remember exactly how he said it, but he said, be patient. Some of you, it's better that you're alone than to deal with the madness you got to deal with.
He said it's a blessed time.
Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's just I look at these lessons and I say, okay, how can I make this personal? How can I look at this and find out the relationship between the tech, and how can I use this as a means of processing so Brother Lukman can get more of his attention units back?
Mm-hmm.
I look at certain behaviors now as an adult, and this is one of the things that caused me to ask my father certain questions about my childhood, and he verified certain things that I had suspected for a long period of time. And then when I questioned my godmother, she verified it as well. Here I got two verifications from two different sources, and I don't think they were conspiring with one another.
Right.
They just verified something I had suspected
And it's been
for the longest time. I did not like being alone, and I did not know why. It was just something that I didn't like being alone. One day out of the blue, I just questioned my dad. I said, Dad, I'm just have a question, and I just need to know. I said, was there any time in my childhood when I was left alone? Because I'm taking the tech of Dianetics now, and I'm trying to find out and figure out some things as to why my mind is operating the way it does. At first, he didn't want to respond because he didn't want me to have any ill feelings towards my mother. Now,
right.
we had a great relationship. I have nothing against my mom because I understand my mother went through some crap when she was growing up. So I don't blame her for anything.
Mm-hmm.
But my father told me that, he used to work the third shift. That means he worked the graveyard shift. And there was times when my mother would go out and she would leave me home by myself. I have a memory of that.
Mm.
The memory was about I must have been about 2 or 3 years old. And I still have a vivid memory of being home by myself. I have a memory of waking up on my couch. I can still see the couch. I can tell you what color it was. I can see the TV. This was back when TVs only had 2 channels on it, UHF and VHF. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
This was back when TV went off at 12 o'clock. The Star Spangled Banner, and that was it. I remember it. I can see it all right in front of me right now. I remember waking up on the couch. I can look down and see my chubby little legs jump down off the couch, turn the TV off, and go into my bedroom. And for years, I asked myself the question, why would I wake up on the couch and put myself to bed? If a parent was there, the parent would have made sure I was in bed before the TV went off. Does that make sense?
Right.
Okay. So I've been wrestling with that for years, and he verified it. And then when I spoke to my godmother said that there was times when my mother would come, she would go to the bar, and she would bump into my godmother, and my godmother would say, "Where's Tony?" And my birth name is Anthony. And it just so happens that my family members, they call me Tone, like tone scale. They call me Tone.
Mm-hmm.
And she would say, "Well, he's back at the house." So my godmother would come to the apartment, and I'm in my crib crying because I'm home by myself.
Wow.
Mm.
You know, I had to go through auditing for that because I had to get some of that out. You know, I can talk about it now. I understand it now, and it doesn't affect me like it used to, because now I prefer to be by myself sometimes. I actually like being by myself. I would sometimes rather be by myself, because now I can be by myself and I can get quiet and talk to God for a little bit, and God talks back. Okay.
Yeah, he does.
So that for me, that's English lesson number C1. That made it personal, and I was able to have an understanding of how the tech can affect me and help me understand. Now, some people might say, well, it was terrible that she did that. Well, I know my mother went through something in her childhood that kind of messed her up, so I don't blame her for it. Okay, I never told my mother about some of the stuff I went through, because I did not want my mother to hold herself or blame herself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my mother and I always had a great relationship. My father and I had a great relationship. My father was next to the minister. My father was the best man walking the earth. I loved and I love my father to death.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but my father had some stuff he went through in Vietnam, and he was a dark, Sister Angela, my father's like your complexion.
I know that's right.
He was a dark complexion man raised in the South, so I know he was crazy. Because he grew up in that environment with all that stuff that was going on. Okay. And my mother, being Italian, well, she was gangster too. I've seen my mother pull out her pistol on people. I came from two crazy, aberrated folks. They were both gangster. And that's why Brother Luke Mom's crazy as hell. that's the way it is.
Cut up a little bit.
You know, a little. You know, Angela, your folks and my folks are from Montgomery. And I just showed you. All I do is throw my cap in the air, and it's getting on and popping now, right?
You know what? I'm bringing my chair.
You know, so, you know, but what I do is I try to study this tech so I can take what Allah shows me and share it. But when I put together these PowerPoints, this is my medication.
Hey.
I'm trying to self-medicate and figure out myself, because I want to be here when the minister gets back.
Come on now.
Okay. I wish I could remember where I heard the minister say this. He said he was, and I'm paraphrasing it, and I would not lie to you about this. I just can't remember where I heard this from. The minister said he was talking about those 3 years that we would have to go through the trial.
Mm-hmm.
And he said when he returns, whoever is here when he comes back would be deserving of the hereafter.
Just be breathing, he said.
You know, it was something along those lines that he deserving of.
Yeah.
Okay. So
real.
No, I just went off on a real wide tangent on that one.
No, it's all interconnected.
All right.
Okay. Now we're going to come in for a landing, because is it possible that the foods that we consume play a part in keeping us aberrated? So here we've been talking about this ACTH, correct?
Yep.
And the body, through emotional situations, reducing ACTH that is like the glue that keeps the engrams in place.
Oh
But
yeah.
now, huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Hmm.
So now, if that's the case, if ACTH is part of the problem, the thought that came to my mind just a couple of days ago, I said, is it possible that there's certain things that they're putting in the food that causes stress to the body and cause the body to produce ACTH?
Hmm.
And if that's the case, then one of the ways they keep our engrams intact is by giving us the wrong food. So because the devil taught them to eat the wrong food, right?
Right.
I was looking at that as if to say the devil can keep us aberrated through the foods that we're consuming.
All them commercials. Yes.
But now
Yes.
remember, the Most High Elijah Muhammad said that the brain, I think he said the brain and the stomach are connected. What affects one
Mhm.
affects the other.
Mhm.
So then that right there tells you, if you have the chemistry that can affect the stomach and the stomach is connected to the mind, then even if a person is going through the process of auditing, if their diet is not clean, then they won't go clear.
Oh, absolutely.
And then earlier, I shared this with us. I was in a conversation with two brothers earlier, and this one brother had a lot of questions. He was asking because he had heard about the tech and whatnot. And he made a statement about putting new wine in an old wineskin. I said, that's an excellent statement. I said, let's look at this from the standpoint of Dianetics. I said, when you look at the fact that the minister put us on the path of studying the tech, there were those that reacted in a negative context, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So why would they react to the minister in a negative way? It's because they still had their reactive mind, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because why would you accuse the minister
Come
of
on.
studying this tech that was given through a Caucasian man, yet you claim the Most High Elijah Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and he wanted us to look into the poison book that was authored by King James.
Mm.
And not only was it authored by King James, but we have proof that shows that William Shakespeare was a part of the process, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And the Holy Quran was revealed through a white man. But you make the accusation that the minister is changing the teachings.
Mm.
If the Most High Elijah Muhammad said where he says go, go, and where he says stay from, and if you go against the minister, then that just shows that that reactive mind is still present, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, if the minister has already told us that through him we would receive the new teachings, and we're told eye has not seen, ear has not heard, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So the new teaching will be something that's different than what we're learning now, correct?
Mm-hmm.
If we can't accept the tech of Dianetics,
Woo!
then how can we accept what the minister's going to bring if it's totally new? Again, we would say he's changing the teachings.
Mm.
But now, when you look at what Dianetics really does for the individual, if we're cleaning out the ACTH and we're cleaning out the reactive mind, we're cleaning out all those things that would fight against a new teaching when that new teaching comes, correct?
Mm. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We won't have a reactive mind to react against the minister when the new teaching comes. Those that are purified and clear, as the Bible says, they're going to be on Mount Zion with the Lamb singing a new song.
Come on.
See, if it's a new song, then it's different than the old song, correct?
Right.
Okay, so the new song is like a new teaching. But if we still have our reactive mind when the new song comes and we've never heard this teaching before, one of the first things that the aberrated individual is going to say is, I never heard the Most High Elijah Muhammad teach that.
Right.
Of course not, because it doesn't mean that the Most High Elijah Muhammad didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
It said he knew it all, but he could not teach it all at one time, right?
Yes, sir. We
So
couldn't bear it.
so in other words, the wineskin has to be made new in order to be the receptacle for the new wine.
No, you teaching.
So that's what the tech is doing. The tech is preparing the body in order to be ready for the new wisdom. That's just my opinion.
Mm.
Because you can't put new wine in an old wineskin. Old
Right.
wineskin is aberrated as hell.
Mm.
You
It'll
have to
bust.
put the new wine in a new wineskin. Well, when you look at what takes place, if you look at the tech of removing the ACTH from the body, and you look at the How to Eat to Live of fasting, in a 3-day fast, the Most High Elijah Muhammad says that if you want to increase yourself in the spiritual level, fast for 3 days. What happens during the 3 days? Your body converts from carbohydrates to ketones.
Mm-hmm.
Ketones is a byproduct of burning fat, and the brain operates better on ketones. What else takes place? The body begins to go through and cleanse all the toxins and toxic materials out of the body. And there's a chemical your body begins to produce called HGH. It's human growth hormone. Guess what human growth hormone does? It reverses the aging process.
Mm.
So when we're cleaning out the old stuff, the ACTH, we're cleaning out all the old stuff that's keeping the engrams in place. And then now we're removing the radiation through the navy beam, and we're fasting, we're allowing our body to heal itself. Well, we're prepping the body to reverse the aging process. And then guess what else happens during the 3-day fast? Your body produces a chemical called BDNF. That's called BDNF is what is it? Brain-derived BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is like the body producing a fertilizer for the brain where you actually begin to grow new brain cells.
Wow.
It's a renewal of the mind. So when you take How to Eat to Live on top of the Dianetics, oh, that's like a 1-2 punch right there.
Mm.
If you take a computer that has malware and viruses and you want to update the system, one of the first things you have to do is you have to remove the malware and the viruses from the computer so you can increase your processor speed, correct?
Right.
So once you remove the old stuff from your computer, now you can update it with the new stuff, with the new system. Well, the minister is going to bring us a new system update, but we got to cleanse the computer first to make the room for the new programs, right?
Yes.
So that's why the supreme wisdom has to be married with the supreme technology. We have to be prepared for the new wisdom that's coming, because we can't even handle the decision that the minister made now with the Dianetics. How are we going to handle this new book that's coming that's totally new that we've never seen before? And people are going to say, well, the messenger never taught that. So we're in for a rude awakening. Okay, we're right in line with landing. So is it possible that the foods we consume play a part in keeping us aberrated? And I'm just going to touch on this briefly, because I think we did speak on this once before, and maybe this will lead us into a part 2 at another time. But when you look at ACTH, it says there are animal studies, for example, showing that monkey babies deprived of maternal nurturing, neglected or abused, in effect, have high levels of CRF and so have high steroid levels. So we're going to touch on this ACTH for a quick minute. So children that are neglected, and the reason why I put this, because it hit home with me, because I was neglected when I was a child. So what happened? You know, one of the reasons why Brother Luke was probably crazy is I probably got a lot of high levels of CRF in my system. I don't know. I'm not saying I'm a baby monkey. I'm saying that, the principles are the same.
Right.
So she says, remember, it's a feedback loop that is out of control. Depressed people are stuck in a disruptive feedback loop that resists any kind of drug therapy that aims at suppression of the steroids. So part of the problem is people get on psychotropics and they don't have the effect that they should, because the problem is much deeper. She says, in humans, the result can be extremely limited patterns of behavior and response, which eventually drive people into an emotional black hole. So when our behavior patterns are and the way we respond to problems is limited. Have you ever heard the saying that if everything's if everything in life is a nail, then all you have is no, if all you have is a hammer, everything in life is a nail, something like that, right?
Okay.
Have you ever heard that before?
I know, but it's interesting.
Okay, there's a saying that if all you have is a hammer in your toolbox, everything in life is a nail. It means you react the same way to everything because that's the only way you can react. Some of us can only react on tone 2.0. All we have is anger. Everything you say is an angry response. You can say good morning. Well, what's so good about it? Tell me good morning for it. You know, we just have a nasty remark for everything. We have a limited response to anything that takes place.
Okay.
And she says the reason we can get stuck like this is because these feelings get retained in the memory, not just in the brain, but all the way down to the cellular level.
Wow.
She's saying the same thing that L. Ron Hubbard said back in the 50s.
Uh-huh.
Our aberration, because he said the reactive mind is the physical body. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. He doesn't really say it in book 1, but when you get further down in the text, the reactive mind, we live in our reactive mind. Let's put it that way. And the goal is we have to master our reactive mind. Our reactive mind is our messed body, our physical body. She says the memory of the trauma is stored by these changes at the level of the neuropeptide receptor. These are the receptors that are actually on each cell. Some occurring deep in the interior of the cell at the very roots of the receptor. This is taking place body-wide. Although such changes can be reversed and need not be permanent, this takes time. So our aberration is body-wide. And that's what addiction, that's what compulsion, and that's what obsession is that all of a sudden that little voice begins to whisper in us with regards to certain things we have a desire for. And the more we try to ignore it, the more our body begins to ache for it. Have we ever experienced that before?
Uh-huh.
Okay. It's like we're at war with our body now. Our body's saying one thing. It's like the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other. Right?
Yes, sir.
Goodness gracious.
The babies were fed, but not touched. The babies were fed, but not touched, cuddled, or held. They soon had all the signs of trauma and depression, as would be expected in light of all we've just talked about. So in these studies, they took these baby chimps, they fed them, but that's all they got. They didn't get nothing else. And these chimps began to suffer from depression and trauma. And now some of us, we can take this same principle and plug it in like an equation. Why is he suffering from trauma and depression now as a grown man or as a grown woman? Because she was not touched, cuddled, or held when she was a baby. In other words, some of us act the way we are now because we were neglected when we were children. And now we're struggling just to keep our head above water now, but we still suffer from things that happened in our childhood. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
He says they were cured. The stress symptoms were reversed when researchers brought in what they called a monkey hug therapist, which was an older monkey who constantly hugged and cuddled the stressed out baby monkeys. So what was going on? She says that The hugging broke the feedback loop, sending the message, no more steroids needed. Damage over and done with. The chronically elevated CRF levels came down. Now, I might be wrong in saying this, but I'm going to say it. The mosque is supposed to be a place for healing. But the problem is we don't always get that love when we place with the believers. This is why Savior's Day is such a high-toned experience, because everywhere you go, it's Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam, queen, wa alaikum salam, king, assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam, da, 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 da. That's Savior's Day. At that moment in time, whatever we're suffering from at home, we forget about it when we're in Chicago or Detroit for those 3 days, because we're around the believers and we're in an environment of love and peace and assalamu alaikum and wa alaikum salam and happy Savior's Day, Queen. We're in a totally different environment. So what happens? We are breaking the feedback loops. How? Because everywhere you look, you see sisters hugging sisters and you see brothers hugging brothers, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we're in an environment where we don't have that re-stimulation. Unfortunately, we have to come back home, and we don't always bring that with us.
Oh boy.
Removal and reduction of charge. Well, that's done because the ACTH is the problem, but the removal of charge with respect to the tech of Dianetics is the same as the removal of ACTH from the body. Well, what do you mean, Brother Lukman? Tears of grief, tears of anger, and tears of apathy have a different chemistry than tears of happiness. And this has been proven through research. So when a person connects to that painful memory and they begin to cry, the tears of grief actually have ACTH in them. The ACTH is the charge that we're talking about. So we're removing the ACTH when we get them to connect to that moment of pain and they cry. And this is why, and all of us here have been audited, and we remember how we felt after we had that real good cry. When you used up half that little box of Kleenex they gave you. Did not you feel lighter after the cry and felt better? Your body got the ACTH out, but at the same time, the body produces what's called endorphins. And the word endorphin is the combination of two words, endogenous morphine, which means it's morphine that is produced naturally in the body. Laughter, which is the end phenomena of auditing, laughter produces endorphins in the body. So in auditing, from a biochemistry level, we're removing the glue that keeps the engrams in place and keeps the arthritis and the rheumatism and all those other things that's described in our problem book. We're removing the ACTH from the body that's keeping the sicknesses there, and we're replacing it with endorphins that's giving us a natural high. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And here's the proof. Sister Patricia, can you tell us about can you share the story of Miss Crenshaw? Sister Patricia, they call you Mary Jesus, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can you explain to the believers why they call you Mary Jesus?
Oh, yes, sir. So, in Tuskegee a few years ago, several auditors went down to audit the mothers of murdered children, and I received Miss Crenshaw as my pre-clear. Had never seen her or met her before, and the brothers basically had to carry her into the building. She was on a walker, but she could hardly walk. And so we went into session, and she told me I could use her story at any time, so it's okay.
Okay.
2 of her sons were killed. She had 3 sons. Her first son was killed by her husband as a baby. Her second and third sons were both shot as adults. One of them dropped dead at that point, and the other ran. He collapsed, but he's still alive. And so we went through her case. And by the way, I've never cried in an auditing session, but I cried in that one. She didn't know I was crying because her eyes were closed, but the story was so powerful. So after the session was over, we went out and we all sat down to eat. And she got up and she went to throw her plate away. And she turned around to come back and she said, "Oh my God, I'm standing straight up." And she walked to the trash can without her walker. So she said, "Oh my good, we have it on video." She said, "Oh my goodness, it was in my back. The pain was in my back." And so she left and she came back the next day and we did more auditing. So she came with a cane the next day, but she walked out carrying the cane. So a couple weeks later, she went to the doctor and her doctor took her off of several medications. And the brother Scott called me Mary Jesus because he saw her walk after she couldn't walk into the building.
The sister made the lame walk by God's permission.
Yes, sir.
So we have a righteous individual in our presence.
A lot, yeah.
Thank you, Sister Patricia. And Sister Patricia, did you know that I actually grew up with Ronald?
You told me that.
Yeah, I actually because he's from Schenectady, New York. I grew up with Ronald. We used to ride bikes together when we were children, play popcorn and football. So I knew the brother.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a small world.
Yes, sir, it is.
So Sister Angela, Sister Mary Jesus, you know, make sure you work together for the redemption of the rest of our the believing family here in the wilderness of North America.
Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah.
Thank you, Sister Patricia.
You're welcome.
Let me go back one. Come on, my computer is working slow. Okay, so it is through the process of auditing, which is contacting the painful emotions and the release of tears, that allows the removal of ACTH to allow the pre-clear to begin the process of mental, emotional, and physical healing. So whenever anyone asks how the process works, there's a biochemical, mathematical, sound reason why the auditing works. You're removing the chemistry that's hindering the immune system, that's disallowing the body to heal from trauma. It's based on chemistry. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We're going to do one ayat from the Holy Quran, and then we're going to handle any questions, and then we're going to close it out. And we're right on time. Now, there's more ayats from the Holy Quran. Unfortunately, I ran out of time trying to get this prepared because when me and these other brothers I don't know if any of your family, do you know Brother Danny Muhammad? He was one of the brothers, him and his wife are two of the believers that went clear a couple years ago. Okay, well, you
Sister
don't.
Naira?
No, not Sister Naira. Sister Naira was the first one.
Right.
Brother Danny and his wife is Sister Eugenia. When I met Brother Danny, he was going through the survival rundown. He was just starting the process of going clear, and that was around 2016, 2017, somewhere around there. But he went clear a couple of years ago. And you see this brother now, oh, he looks like he's around 30 or 40 years old. And the brother, he's up in age like me. I said, but I gotta get through the process, brother, because you looking like you're a little teenager all over again. He just busted out laughing. Every time I see the brother, he's smiling. I said, that is what I need.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're only going to deal with one ayat from the Holy Quran, and maybe God willing, we'll do a part 2 next Sunday. We'll see what happens. But I want to see, could we find the concept of charge in the Holy Quran? Since Allah says that He's given us a book explaining all things, then it would have to be. So let's see. Come on, computer. So the word charge in Arabic is khalifa, which is not the same as vicegerent. Okay. Vicegerent is Khalifa. Khalifa. This is a different, there's a th sound and a k sound. This is the straight K, Khalifa. It means to burden oneself or to be burdened. Now, does that sound the same as charge?
Yeah.
Sounds the same as charge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It means to force oneself. It means to be under obligation. Now, all these words are kind of describing charge, aren't they? Because if you have
Yes, sir.
charge, isn't there a force that's being applied on yourself?
Yes, sir.
That's called restem, right? That's called dramatization. Okay. When you're under an obligation, we could say that's called a compulsion, correct?
Mm-hmm.
When you have charge, don't you bother someone?
Yes.
Don't you bother yourself? You know, aren't we a burden to other people when we're dramatizing?
Yes.
Okay. So when you look at the Holy Quran, again, this is one ayat. There's many more, but I just was able to put one in here. It says, no soul shall be burdened beyond its capacity. Okay. Now, these ayats in the Holy Quran to me are like equations. And an equation is you can input something and produce an output. So if you look at the word soul, well, first of all, we look at the word burdened. Okay, the word burden in Arabic, this is that same sentence in Arabic, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. But when you look at the word to kalafu, the root word is khalifa, which means burdened. And that's the word we're saying that's the same as charge, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then we could say no soul shall be charged beyond its capacity. Could we say that?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But now when you look at the word soul, the word soul comes from the root word nafasa, which means heart, mind, soul, or spirit. So now could we also say, by inputting these different words into the equation, that no mind will be charged beyond its capacity? Can we say that?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Okay. And even though I removed that D from soul, that D still found its way in there. I tell you, I could.
Hmm.
And then when you look at the word capacity, the Arabic word is wasu', which means to contain, or it means capacity. And that brings us back to that word capacitance. Remember, a capacitor is something that stores an electrical charge, even though it's no longer connected to a power source. Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
So could we say that no mind shall be burdened beyond its capacity?
Mm-hmm.
So could that mean that no matter what we're suffering from, if we just have faith, Allah's not going to put on us a burden that we don't have the strength to bear? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, hopefully, God willing, on Wednesday, we're going to go into the mathematics that will prove all of this to be true. We're going to, if it pleases Allah, we're going to use something in physics, but we're going to use it to show why. We're going to show how an engram works using physics. And we're going to show the importance of erasing, trying to get the furthest back on the chain that we can get. And just by erasing that, we free up attention units further down on the time track. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes, sir.
we're gonna prove that mathematically, God willing. I'm gonna try to get that done before Wednesday. We're gonna use physics as a demo kit to show the relationship between the Holy Quran and Dianetics. And I think, and then feeding our insanity, this is where we close it out. So if ACTH and other stress hormones can be used to keep engrams in chronic stimulation, is it possible that there are chemicals in the food that create an environment that also keep the engrams in place? So there are certain foods that cause stress on the body on the chemical level that cause the body to produce the same stress chemicals produced during emotional stressful situations. These foods can be summarized in processed foods, sugar, and alcohol. So basically, when you look at what the Most High Elijah Muhammad says in How to Eat to Live with regards to things that we should not eat, those foods that we should not eat actually produce a stressful environment in the body that can cause the production of ACTH. So if we're constantly eating the wrong food, then we are kept in a state of aberration through the foods that we're consuming. Does that make sense?
That is
Yes,
amazing.
sir.
And that's just hitting it on the surface. We actually did discuss this in detail. There actually is a Zoom meeting right now on the YouTube channel.
I've seen it.
Okay, and the name of that one was Aberration Through Our Diet or something like that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we went into a lot more detail in that one. Okay,
Mhm.
so family, any questions, any thoughts, any cognitions, any postulates, any corrections, anything before we wrap it up?
Just awesome.
Praise is due to Allah.
Yeah.
Are there any? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Brother, look,
Yes.
yeah, I was just thinking of that surah that says Allah lays not a burden on you beyond your scope.
Mhm.
And I was thinking that it's like imbalance on if we go beyond the scope. In other words, or we feel like I think if we remember that I think we won't go overboard. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because he's placing on us what we can bear
Mhm.
beyond, you know, and when it goes beyond, I'm thinking it's not a lot putting it on us, but we going overboard with it, you know, adding more weight on us mentally, or more weight physically on
Mhm.
us. That's what I was thinking about as you was reading that
Mhm.
verse, because he wants us to stay balanced. He said that the mosque is a hospital, and I said it's a psych ward too. And that's why we had those self-improvement study guides, because we be going through extra stuff, you know,
Mhm.
finding a balance, overcoming difficulties. I mean, we just work out with that. And I'm just so grateful, because I was just thinking the other day how the minister has given us everything. I mean, you know, just word itself out, just giving us, making sure. He said, I've taught you well. If you're a fool, it's because you want to be one. You know, he gave us this. He's so generous, you know, when he gives us the you know, this last lesson and all the things that he's given us. We just need to, like you say, incorporate. Why do you say that? You can use the tech and supreme wisdom to make it personal.
Mhm.
And every time I do that, you know, I you know, it's like doing the input of the numbers, you know, and the letter is there, but you put the words there and it equals something else.
Mhm.
You know, when other than yourself,
Mhm.
when other than a righteous Muslim. Because yourself is a righteous Muslim.
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So that's what I was. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Oh, do you have something else?
No, sir. I said thank you.
Ready to be too alive. Go ahead, Sister Angela.
Yes, sir. Listening, and I think some of us, speaking about those that either question the minister on his decision for us to take on some of the teachings of L. Ron Hubbard. I think that doubt is something that was already there. I'm also seeing an amazing thing happen at the same time. Being an auditors coordinator, I talk to a lot of auditors, and I'm noticing, how can I say, it's like something's receding. You understand what I'm saying? It's like with everything, it's just like us having supreme wisdom, message to the Black man, how to eat to live. I mean, we have a host of keys to unlock doors within ourselves that auditors in particular
Mm-hmm.
is the inability to rise above emotions into the thinking of God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most of the people that I have to talk down right now are auditors to help prepare them to possibly be of some help. And what I'm seeing is this Christ-like or Jesus-like place we all gonna have to end up. Because, I remember, I think somebody just mentioned a sister's name, Sister Naira. And I remember when it hit social media that she went clear, and the minister came and made his statement about that. He said he's the only one that can clear something. And it always kind of stayed with me for some odd reason. And I think it's because of this right here. There's a condition in and out of some of the mosques in the Nation of Islam. You have people that feel comfortable at the mosque. You have some people that don't. And for some of us that are under certain studies, we kind of seeing a climax about to happen. Like for me being an auditor, I see my caseload is not as heavy as it will be very soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it because even for some of us that have some awakening, we can't seem to get past ourselves. And I'm saying even to the point of like Jesus, because this is where I'm seeing we have to be. We have to be so in tune that we can say to someone that transgress us, forgive him, Father, they know not what they do. And a lot of us, especially with auditing, especially with Ron Hubbard, like some of us gave Master Fard Muhammad a pass, you know what I mean? But he's the only one, it's the only white man. And we kind of stuck in these different time frames. I won't even say the time track because they don't even have to be hours. Coming from the South, like you from Montgomery, our people were treated terribly there. Mm-hmm. They have a very, I could use the word that Allah used with Eve and the serpent, enmity between them, a deep, natural dislike or hate for each other that some of us are still carrying and won't allow us to pick up the tool. Or even if we do, we so limited, or, well, I just did it because it is an instruction and not really opening it up to being able to be. I thank Allah for the ability to see myself in a situation and be able to see it. You might want to pull it back. You might want to see how you're viewing your sister, or you're viewing your brother, because it may not be right. And this is the most valuable part of this tool to me. To get through the dark hour, I had to be able to kind of to deny myself and be grace or mercy for somebody else that really did not deserve it or do not deserve it. So this is where I'm kind of coming to this conclusion. Like all of these roads in my mind are leading to a very divine space to be in order to get through. And for one reason or another, be it we studied, be it we're doing the tech, but I still have to fight Angela daily.
Mhm.
Come on.
I still have to fight myself daily. Like my biological sisters just tonight was getting it on and popping at Target. And guess who they called? Now.
The original
I
gangster.
wouldn't be on this call right now, probably at the police station. Because I would have been driving up to Target so I could get it on and popping too.
One of the original gangsters.
I can't hear you, brother. I'm good to just talking, but it just seems that I don't know. It's a very this was given to us for a very intricate and divine reason.
Yes, I believe that.
That's it.
Sister Nancy, I'm gonna throw something your way, and I want to see how you handle it.
Huh?
I'm gonna throw something towards you. I want to see how you respond to this.
Okay.
I have watched the Deportation of Moon twice, and I'm gonna watch it a third time.
Mm.
In that video, or in the lecture, because it's an audio really of Dr. Ava.
Right.
She had mentioned how everything is recorded in the ether. And when she said that, I asked myself the question, is it the ether that contains the time track?
Hmm. I'm sure.
That was one thing. Another thing she had mentioned, and this is, I'm gonna throw this out for any of the believers to and then we'll close it out. But it's something that's been on the back of my mind. There's another brother who I'm gonna contact and kind of pose the question to him and see, because he's been in the nation a whole lot longer than myself. So he might actually have some stable data on this. But it was something that Dr. Ava said about the rebellion of Shabazz and how we fell based on our rebellion, and it's taken us 50,000 years, correct?
Good grief.
Okay, now there's something in the Holy Quran, and I saw this once before. And okay, so here's the thought, because she mentions reincarnation in that presentation. Now, the thought is this, because this has a lot to do with what L. Ron Hubbard teaches in Science and Survival. He mentions giving credit to those going back 50,000 years. If we rebelled, and she said that we're going through what we're going through because we rebelled 50,000 years ago. But none of us rebelled 50,000 years ago.
Did we though?
Or did we?
Come on.
Okay, or did we? Now, here's again, there are certain things I just like to ask those what if questions. In Surah 70, it says, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, a questioner asks about the chastisement to befall. The disbelievers, there's none to avert it. From Allah, Lord of the ways of ascent. Then the next ayat says, to him ascend the angels and the spirit in a day, the measure of which is 50,000 years. So our fall was 50,000 years ago, but has this been a 50,000 year process for us to ascend back? Meaning, if we were of the tribe that rebelled, if they rebelled, why are we going through the process? unless, and this is just a thought in my mind, I like to ask what if questions, unless we are part of those that rebelled 50,000 years ago.
Old souls?
Is it possible that we're the old souls that rebelled and left and went to the deep part of Africa, and now it's taking all this time to get back? And that the perfected one, the Savior, came to restore that tribe back to its place? Is that possible?
Mm.
Did I say something?
Of course, Sister Patricia.
Oh, where can I start? Well, I've been taught that, and it's in the Holy Quran, I can't say where,
I'll find it.
but speak not of those who are,
Oh,
Too.
that's Surah 3, verse
Oh
169.
yeah, the family of man. Yep, you're right.
speak not of them as dead, because we perceive not. They're not dead, but we perceive not.
Right.
So I was taught, I can't remember where, I was baptized in a Baptist church, then I was raised in the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses, and now I'm a Muslim. But somewhere
on
along
now.
those lines, I was taught that we have other lives. We have had other lives. I believe that when we die, our spirit returns to Allah. So our spirits don't die. Our body dies, it goes back to the earth, but our spirit returns to Allah. So Allah can send us back in anybody, any physical body. And so I believe we could have been of that 50,000 years ago, those people who rebelled. And I was on staff at the Church of Scientology for a while in Atlanta, and they even talk about that as far as when someone dies, they drop their body. In other words, they leave their body. And so I sincerely believe that. So maybe we are of those who rebelled 50,000 years ago.
Okay. Now, there is, now I'm going to add some stable data to that. And I'm not going to interpret this ayah, I'm just going to lay it out there.
Okay.
Surah 56, ayat number 60 and 61. Here's what it says. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. We have ordained death among you, and we are not to be overcome, that we may change your state and make you grow into what you know not. So death, based on what I'm seeing, I'm not going to interpret any further than that. But death is not the end.
Yes, sir.
And that Surah you're quoting, Surah 3, 169 and 170 says, do not speak of those who are died in the way of Allah as dead. Nay, they are alive and they perceive not. And they rejoice on behalf of those who have not yet joined them. They're receiving benefits from the Lord, and they rejoice on behalf of those being left behind, have not yet joined them.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
That So now, here's
Yes.
another question. And then Sister Angela, let me just throw this out here, because this is the thought that just popped in my head just today.
Let's see.
I said to myself, okay, if we are of the tribe of Shabazz, and we're trying to get back to that state of where we were before, and if we are of the God tribe, and Sister Dr. Ava said that Shabazz means unconquerable, correct? She said in Deportation of Moon, Shabazz means unconquerable. Now, if we're the ones trying to get back to our right state, then where do those believers come from that are on the wheel?
That are what?
On the wheel.
Ooh.
Just a thought. So whoever prescribes the diameter of your thinking controls the circumference of your activity. How do you expand your circumference? You have to ask a question that's outside the circumference of what you know. You have to ask a what if question, or as Ron Hubbard calls it, a theta postulate. Ask something that's outside the circle that other people will say, oh, now you're just high science and stuff. You're just a bean soup scientist. No, I'm asking questions that are outside the circumference because I'm trying to expand the diameter of my thinking.
Yeah.
If we are of the tribe of Shabazz, which tribe is on the wheel?
Mm.
It's just thought. What is this, Angela?
Well, I'll take the bean soup scientist since the navy bean is the only bean that grows to the right. Not to the left. So to further bake our noodles, first I'm gonna
Okay, Oracle.
let's take a little stab at what you just said. I heard the minister talk about missing children, and I just had a matrix moment on the Nebuchadnezzar. He said to Morpheus said to Neo, "We usually don't free your mind after a certain age."
Oh, wow.
Right? So I'm gonna just throw that out there. And I'll throw this out there too while you were talking. So I went back. I mean, really went back to that conversation with Iblis and Allah. Just how old are we? How could you tell a God that I would come in your purified, well, in your your elect, that's the word he used. I will come in a straight path. And I will come from them from before and behind, all ways except from Ariel, but we'll talk about that another time. It's something that Bliss knew about his own immortality or his ability, like Denzel Washington in Fallen, to just keep changing conductors or conduits, right? So how old are we? Well, the part of the we that is mentioned in the Holy Quran, are we part of the tribe of the havoc wreaking angels? Just how old are we? That's my noodle baker right there.
I'll pose a response from Message to the Black Man.
Come on now.
Page number 9, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, that first God we know is no longer present. But his person exists in his people today.
Right.
Now, I remember seeing one time where you look at the word person, you look it up, the word person will come from persona, which has to deal with sound. And when you're dealing with sound, you're dealing with vibration and frequency, correct? So if his person exists in his people today,
come on,
how did his person travel through time for 76 or 78 trillion years to the year 2023? It had to travel through conduits. So now if each one of us takes our body and rewinds it backward, unless we're the product of a virgin birth somewhere, each one of us had a mother and a father, correct?
Right.
Each one of them had a mother and father. Each one of them had a mother and father. So there's a genetic line from you and I going all the way back to the beginning of when the first God created himself from triple darkness, because the minister says that we are direct descendants. So is it possible that our Satan, we, ourselves, the I of the center of awareness, is it possible that we are 76 trillion years old living in these 40, 50, and 60-year-old bodies?
We are the boy.
But we just don't have a memory going back that far. And is that what's being reawakened in us? Because we had to go to sleep to allow the other man to rule. And now that his time is over with, now through the tech and through what the Savior has blessed us to receive and what the minister has given us of the teachings, Muhammad has given us, now, in the words of doom, the sleeper is awakening. So if his person exists in us today, even L. Ron Hubbard said the time track is 76 trillion years old. So are we looking at the original tribal Shabazz in different form in modern time now? These are just like some of the questions I like to stir these around and ask. So that's just me.
I think we are the Borg. It's to me, you just signified uh, a sense of a plural sense of a singularity, a single essence, just like the 99 attributes. It's like unlimited copies of the singularity that are timeless.
The attribute Ehad, Kul hu Allahu Ehad, say he Allah is one.
Mhm.
Ehad in Arabic means unified or unity. So when you talk about unified, you're talking about one, but you're talking about a group of elements that are one.
Right.
Whew.
Okay. So cool. Say he Allah is one. You're
Mhm.
talking about a group and a singularity at the same time.
We are the board.
So in lesson number 2, who wrote Holy Quran or Bible? We're told,
Mm.
you know, the Asiatic black man, and it says, who is Allah?
Right.
So we are Allah, but the Bible says it like this. In Romans 1:20, it says, the invisible things of this world from the beginning are clearly seen through the things that are made, even the God power and the Godhead, so that they will be without excuse. So if there's a Godhead, then he has to be a head God. And if you're all God's children of the Most High God, that means the children and the one are, they're ahead, but there's one over the group, right?
Right.
Okay, so we have the perfected one, and he is at the head of those that make up part of that we. I hope to include myself in the we, but I'm just saying we, according to the Holy Quran, because the minister said the we in the Holy Quran represents those who are in harmony and agreement with the God.
Right.
So I'm just saying I got to go back and just study that lecture over and over and over again, because there was a lot of jewels she dropped. But if you don't catch them, they'll just slide right by you. But when she says, you're like, "Ooh, wait a minute, why did she use that word? Why did she say?"
Right.
All her stuff comes from the minister.
All right, now that's some homework.
Yes, ma'am. So the two lectures I'm gonna throw out there for homework is the deportation of Moon, and there was one that the brother mentioned. Actually, there was something we were talking about with the Dianetics, and he said that sounds like something he heard in the pathology of hypocrisy.
Oh yeah, that's a good.
So now I got to go and restudy that one all over again.
We on study guide 17 now. Too.
And we're on study guide number 17. And here's the last thing I'll share with you. The word hypocrite in Arabic. If you look at all the words that come under the word hypocrite in Arabic, and if you look at the ethics book, Introduction to Scientology Ethics, has anyone ever read that book?
Yes.
You know the 12 characteristics of the suppressive?
Mm.
All 12 of those,
man.
12 of those characteristics and ethics you find in the Arabic dictionary under the word hypocrite.
Wow.
I'm with the help of Allah, I'm putting together a PowerPoint on the relationship between the hypocrite of the Holy Quran and the antisocial personality. And if you look at antisocial personality, you have the letters ASP. What's an ASP? What's an asp?
Deadly snake.
That's a snake. Okay, that's a snake. But the Arabic word for hypocrite describes all the characteristics of the antisocial personality.
Wow.
And we'll leave that one for another time.
Wow.
So the tech, we've already had it. We just, the minister says, pick up your Quran, dust it off. And now we got to go into it. So, Sister Carol, are you still there, Sister Carol?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. We haven't heard from. I guess you just sit there attentively listening tonight, correct?
Oh, yes, sir. I'm digesting. I'm just chewing on it and digesting it slowly. And I I'm with you. I have no discrepancies or anything. I understand, I hear, I see.
Okay.
Uh,
And then Sister Heidi, I feel like as I'm looking at your icon, I'm looking at your energy. Like, don't even try it.
No, that's not it.
That's one of the
Yeah.
that's one of the Jedi. I can't remember her name, but that's one of the Jedis.
Ahsoka.
Ahsoka, yes.
Yeah,
Ahsoka.
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 Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, she's my favorite.
All right. Well,
mm.
family, if we don't have anything else, last thing I want to ask is this: are there any topics you would like to see covered in the future? Any subject you would like to see covered in the future? I take those as assignments and I take them very seriously. So if you have anything that you would like discussed, any of the topics found in any of Dianetics books, anything that you might not fully understand, let me know. I will write it down, and that is my assignment, and I will look into it.
I kind of see. I'm gonna send an email tomorrow. The sister just got back to me. I kind of see this as Savior's Day. Inshallah, we got to make this happen.
What's that?
They do something for the auditing department in the Nation of Islam does something just about every Savior's Day, and it's really low key. But this connection that Allah allowed you to connect to needs to be shared on a very much broader audience within the nation, so we can get back to the tool because it's needed. That's all I can say. So I'm trying to see what can I send in to Sister Aisha to get her attention so you and her can talk.
Anything I can do, this right now is the minister says, blessed is the one who finds their purpose and is found doing it. This right now, out of everything in my life right now, this is my purpose. I can't explain why I'm doing what I'm doing with the help of Allah. I just know that this is what I need to be doing.
Praise be to Allah. I think this is a portal.
Yes, it is.
It's a portal. Because it's gonna open, it's opening our mind, first of all. First, it settles our mind and it opens our mind to be reawakened to things. I was just explaining this to my nephew, television, and they make sure we look at them in a certain way, our counterparts, because what they imagine to do, they know that we can. We can do all that superhero stuff and levitating and teleportation and telekinesis and bringing images up on water and speaking through crystal and using crystal as light, transferring light and energy. That's things that we used to be able to do. I mean, come on, if the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said the mother used to teach a child how to put a star in the sky, what type of beings are we?
We just got to wake back up.
I mean, the alarm is going off.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to share one more thing.
Oh, go ahead, Sister Patricia.
I can't tell you the name of the lecture, but it was Minister Ava. She spoke. And I believe it was before we received Dianetics. But she said she was at a play. She was in the theater at a play. And the play was about slavery. And she said she returned to when she was a slave. She smelled the smoke and she was very angry right there in the theater. But she said she returned. And that just made me think of returning in auditing. But that was not in this lifetime. I just couldn't get that off my mind.
Sister Patricia, how far did you get into the study of the tech?
I'm the last book I did was Science of Survival.
Okay.
I did the purification rundown though.
Okay. So are you aware? I know Science of Survival in column K that deals with speech. Do you have your Science of Survival handy?
No, I'm at work.
Okay, don't worry about it. L. Ron Hubbard says the best indicator of tone is the tone of speech.
Right.
Level of speech. but who has their Holy Quran handy? Anyone have the Holy Quran handy?
Yes, sir.
Can you open to Surah 47, ayat number 30?
Okay. 47. I got what?
30.
Okay. Would you like me to read? You want me to read it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And if we please, we could show them to thee, so that thou shouldest know them by their marks. And certainly thou canst recognize them by the tone of their speech. And Allah knows your deeds.
Now, the word canst, when you look it up, it means can. It doesn't mean can't, cannot, but canst means can. You'll know them by the tone of their speech. So science of survival is actually in harmony with the Holy Quran on that note. Now, once you get past science of survival, and this is something I think I learned it in the Philadelphia doctorate course, L. Ron Hubbard mentions that they ran into problems at a certain time with regards to the auditing, because individuals were coming up with data that didn't make any sense. And then he realized that there was data that was present that came in the previous life track.
Yes.
So the thing is, if reincarnation is what it is, L. Ron Hubbard mentions it in the text. The minister spoke about it in that one clip we watched. And then when you look at information that Mother Tanetta has spoken about, and you look at what Dr. Ava has spoken about, then to me, there is a great possibility that we've been here more than once.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to speak too far into that because I haven't heard the minister really speak on it. But I know I have my own personal opinion on that. Go ahead, Sister Angela.
I think I know I saw that one when the guy was getting, he was processing during the auditing session, and he had a bayonet.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
He was
Yes.
like he went back to Civil War time, and they touched on it right there. You know, studying this, when I first went to the org, I had like between that doggone clear room I was in, between that and it not being of the normal format, it kind of bugged me out a little bit that I'm talking about, I started crying and everything. I guess it took me on a time track to where I may have had an incident in school and I didn't feel like I knew something and I didn't understand, or whatever the case may be. However, I prayed while I was there, and I put in my mind these exact words that I thought, that nothing is higher than supreme wisdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I cleared the course by Allah's grace in 9 days. Something else happened, though. I think me saying to myself, nothing is higher than supreme wisdom, fused these two things together for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was the bridge. So as I started learning to get sessions and going up and down the time track and talking to the file clerk, I also realized that I can go up and down the time track like a time machine at will. I could have a conversation with my mother tonight if I choose to. And my mother passed in 2008. I can travel. I wanted to know what the hills and cave sides looked like when the devils were bound in them, and I walked 3 steps in them. Smelled, saw, felt, was there. So there's something very heavy to be unlocked here. It's just that we have to be able and willing to go through the portals.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree.
Assalamu alaikum, family. I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Earlier, you mentioned about being clear.
Mm-hmm.
Like, So what determines a person to be clear?
Okay, that's a good question. In the tech, you have what's called release and you have a clear.
Okay.
And the clear is an individual who has their entire engramic bank or reactive mind wiped out. Meaning there's nothing there that can stimulate you. There's no valences. You are face to face with who you are as an individual. How that is described in the Holy Quran and how we could say that's described in our lessons is like this. In the Holy Quran, the devil or Iblis says, I'm going to lie in wait for all those on the straight path. And Allah says, you'll get all those except my purified ones. You're familiar with that ayat, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when you look at that word purified, if you look at that word in Arabic, the word purified in Arabic is the purified ones is mukhalasin, which comes from the root word khalasa. And the Arabic word khalasa means purified, but it also means to be made clear. So the concept of clear in Dianetics is the removal of the engrams or the content of the engrams. But when you look at it from the perspective of the teachings, the way I perceive it, my opinion, if you look in page 81 and page 82 of Our Savior Has Arrived, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad describes the removal of the brown germ, the removal of the old mind, so that we no longer have a desire for the things of this world, the desire of the things of yesterday. So what happens is, in the auditing process, when you look at our habits, our addictions, our bad habits, the things we wrestle with within ourselves, these characteristics don't necessarily belong to us, but they were things that were put on us by people on our time track. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, we're acting out the behavior of other people. So in other words, when we do certain things that is out of character, we are, from the perspective of our lessons, when we are, this is a savage is a person who has lost the knowledge of himself and who is living a beast life. That translates into the Dianetics as this. When you lose the knowledge of yourself in Dianetics, that's called being out of valence. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So when you lose the knowledge of self and you're living a beast life, that means you take on the character of someone else on your time track and you're acting out what they said or what they did. So when you get aggravated, when you get ticked off, has anyone ever told you that you act like so-and-so? And this is for anyone,
Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So when certain events take place, these are called re-stimulations. When certain things take place, here's kind of how it works. At a certain time, you were either witness to something that took place or you were the recipient of something that took place. So in that situation, there's a dominant personality and there's a submissive personality. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Mr. Heidi?
She just muted. I think she said something.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I understand. Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm
Then what
driving.
happens is, being that you witnessed that, your witnessing of it could have caused emotional pain. Or if you are the recipient of what was said, that's the circuit, or the recipient of something painful that took place, you become the submissive person. Now, when those same perceptics happen at a later time, those perceptics, the sound that you hear or what someone might have said, that keys in and turns on the engram. And then what takes place is now, normally the person will take on the role of the dominant person in that engram. So now when you're in the same environment and the same things take place, you become the person and do to other people what was done to you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it reminds me of that
Huh?
saying. It reminds me of the saying, hurt people hurt people.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So you lose the knowledge of yourself because you become someone person, and lost the knowledge of yourself and is living the life of a beast. So you lose your knowledge of Sister Heidi and you become this other person. That's called dramatization. And then you carry out the same behavior on other people of what was done to you or what you witnessed done to other people. You see, in Dianetics, there's 4 flows. Are you familiar with the 4 flows?
A little bit. I'm still
Okay.
in the beginning stages of studying.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. The 4 flows, and I can't remember in order. This might be the right order, but the 4 flows is what has been done to you. The second flow, I believe, is what you have done to others. The third flow is what you've seen done between individuals, and the last flow is what you do to yourself. So when we're aberrated, usually that's based on the first flow, what was done to us. But we can also be aberrated based on what we saw done between other people. So for example, as a child, if we saw our parents fighting, that places a certain charge on us. So now on in sync with English lesson number C1, now as a grown person, why do we act a certain way? It's because we were taught this when we were a child. We're acting out the valence of the dominant person in that situation. And so now we become that person. And then we do to other people what that person did to us. Does that kind of explain? Does that answer your question?
Yes. So how does a person know when they are clear?
I can't, the only way I can answer that is based on what I have been told. And that is that you go through a process where they take you kind of through the ringer, and you will have no emotional responses to what they say or do. Because our emotional responses that we have are based on the valences that are in our reactive mind, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So if all that's
Yes.
removed, then no matter what a person, for example, look at the minister. When he does his interviews, when he did his interviews with Mike Wallace and all these individuals, no matter what they threw at him, you couldn't get the minister to come out of character. Except he chewed on Mike Wallace for a quick minute, but then he came back.
Right.
That was based on the Rwanda statement. The minister gave him exactly what he needed to give him. So when you're clear, you don't have emotional responses with what people say or what people do. You're not going to get no rise out of it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
Okay, primary example. You know for a fact that there's something that someone can either say or do, and they'll catch the wrath of Ahsoka, right?
Yes.
Okay. Being clear is that person can say or do those things and it don't even bother you. Other words, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said like this: you can have the devil wrapped around your pinky and you won't even know again unless you look at him. That's the state of clear. Certain things just don't bother you anymore. You can put your lightsabers away, Sister Heidi, because you won't even need them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Praise be to Allah. Okay, Sister Angela, you got the last word, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
Okay, it's just sounding clear. I told you we got into a kind of in-depth conversation about this. So the best way I left this conversation is with what you said up until that point, up until the moment, because life is still going to go on, and
Mhm.
inshallah, no other things are collected. But it's kind of hard to say. But I imagine clear like this: a jar full of dirt and a whole bunch of other objects, obstructions, simply cleaned out,
Mhm.
and you are what you put in that jar.
Mhm.
And the misconception is clear is righteousness, and it's not. That's
Mhm.
a misconception. You're going to be exactly who you're going to be. You just don't have nothing in your way of being that who you are. And I understand the minister's point also, because we are from a singularity, us being clear should mean that nothing gets in the way of our expression of our connection to the originator,
Mhm.
like David. That's what makes, you just mentioned Savior's Day earlier. It seemed like all of us on our best behavior. It's just such a high tone scale. And that's how I see those that are choosing to put into that cleaned vessel the spirit of Allah. We see so many versions of him, and it's a beautiful thing, because when we go to that first Shabazz, that the deportation of the moon, we got to see where his aberrations come from, and see what caused him not to, or maybe he was just clear. Some people would say Yaqub wasn't clear, but maybe he was just clear on his assignment.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to add that sometimes it's a misconception that clear is righteous. It's just who we were born to be, or who we choose to become.
Mhm. That makes sense. I can see that. So you're saying clear could be knowing what your purpose is. Yaqub was born with a determined idea.
At 6, imagine that. Just
So,
imagine the clarity at 6.
and he used 2 pieces of steel like 2 demo kits.
Oh, oh, oh.
Anyway. All right, family.
I can't get the children off the tablets.
All right. Praise be to God. This has been inspiring. I did upload yesterday another Zoom meeting from 2 years ago dealing with chains. I don't know if you've seen that one yet, but that's been uploaded with dealing with the chains that you find in Dianetics Book 1 and Science of Survival. God willing, this will be uploaded by tomorrow. And I will begin working on the next one, not knowing what it is as of yet. But if you come up with any ideas of anything that you would like to see covered, you can always send me an email, and I take your suggestions as assignments. I look forward to your assignments if you have any. If not, God willing, we'll be back together again, inshallah, Wednesday morning. We will get back into our Quran and the number 19 and our mathematical discussion. With that,
Close it up.
Sister Angela, if you'd like to close us out.
Yes, sir.
Praise be to Allah.
Let us pray. Can you all hear me well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let us pray. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Oh Allah, seek thy refuge from anxiety and grief. And I seek thy refuge from lack of strength and laziness. And I seek thy refuge from cowardice and niggardliness. And I seek thy refuge from being overpowered by debt and the oppression of men. O Allah, suffice thou with me what is lawful to keep me away from what is prohibited, and with thy grace make me free of one who is besides thee. We ask this in the name of your risen and exalted Christ, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, in the name of the Messiah and our Messiah, honorable minister Louis Farrakhan. Amen.
I mean,
Make sure you leave your cookies and your hot chocolate out tonight.
Way ahead of you.
I hear hoof prints on the roof.
Yeah, right.
Better watch out. That may not be him. Maybe Krampus.
Vibes, get vibes.
So I'm going to let y'all go because I know Sister Anne's got to go out and do her Christmas carol tonight. That's
Yeah.
something, family.
Walaikum
Walaikum
salam.
salam.
Walaikum salam. Walaikum salam.